Hello, my name is Fred Gago and I'm here to help introduce you to SketchBook Pro 6 by using some of the basic tools to create a landscape design plan of a public park. I'm using a Mac to run SketchBook Pro, so when I refer to the keyboard commands, I'll be saying Command in the key, but if you're on a PC, then just replace Command with the Control key. We'll use some of the basic pencils and brushes, shape creation tools, and layers to create our design. Let's get started. I'm going to select my felt tip brush, which is located right here at almost the center of our toolbar on the left hand side of the canvas. And I'm going to select from our freehand tool, I'm going to change that to our line tool. And now when I click and drag, you'll notice this dotted line and a straight line should come out. To undo any line you don't want, hit Command Z on the keyboard, or Control Z if you're using a Mac. If you want to increase or decrease your brush size, use the brackets. Left and right brackets will size up and down your brush size. Your line tool and the line it creates varies depending on your brush size. So the bigger your brush, the thicker the line. For now, I'm going to go with a nice medium-sized line. And I'm going to create basically a box with intersecting lines that we'll clean up a bit later. I'm going to make the shape of my park asymmetrical. When I'm done using straight lines, I'll turn back to the freehand option here at the top of our canvas in the toolbar. I'll create some rounded edges. Anytime I don't like a line, I am hitting Command Z to undo. And now with my hard eraser tool, which is just found one down and over to the left on the toolbar, and I'll erase my outer edges. If you hold Shift and drag while you do this as well, you'll get a straight line horizontally or vertically. And once we clean this up, this is going to be our basic outline of our park. Everything we create will take place most likely inside of this area. We'll create assets in just a few minutes that we can use over and over again to populate our park. And this is a good place to start. I'm going to use my marquee tool to click and drag and select the entire outline of our park. The marquee tool is found here on the left hand side of the toolbar on the top of the canvas. I'm going to hit Command C and Command V. Remember, it's Control if you're on a PC. To copy and paste. And I'm going to drag from the center and scale this down. And I'm going to place this and scale it as I need to make it look like the outer rim, this rim here, will be our main sidewalk. So that everything inside of the inner shape will be our park. And while you have the puck open, just hit the X to close it out. Now while I'm in here, I'm going to use my tool here next to the freehand tool. I'm going to select my felt tip pen again. And I'm going to use this shape drawing tool here to create an interesting shape for a pond. Doesn't need to be perfect when you draw it. We can always clean it up with a hard eraser. Just be sure to go back to freehand. And we can clean this up quite nicely. I'm going to use our lasso tool right beside our marquee tool to select this shape to scale it down just a bit. I'm also going to copy and paste again by hitting Command C and Command V. And I'm going to scale this uniformly so that again we have a walkway around our little pond that we're creating. And if I have to stretch this to fit, just do so by using the icon here at the top. And just place it and hit the X here in the puck to close out again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my felt tip pen again. I'm going to go to my line tool. Again, you could select that right here at the top of the toolbar. And I'm going to make some interconnecting lines. What these lines represent are going to be my continued walkway and paths of access. What I'm doing here, I'm basically creating interesting cross sections so that I can divide my park into different areas. I'll have a playground area, I'll have a picnic area, and I'll just have a bunch of grassy area as well as a small parking area. If I just want to use the box tool here, and I'm going to help create some more shapes in here. And just undo until you have what you like. Go back to my line tool. And even though I'm doing this by eye, I'm pretty much trying to keep the same general distance for my paths, the same widths. Some might vary just a little bit, but that's okay. And now what I'll do is I'll use my hard eraser brush. Remember again to take it off the line tool and go back to your freehand tool and start erasing out these areas so that it doesn't look walled off. Scale your brush with the brackets if you have to. So now it looks like you can access all areas of this park by using our main walkway. Once this is cleaned up, I'll use the flood tool to add in some color to make it a little clearer. And if you miss a spot, you'll find out when you go to use the flood tool, and that's okay. You can just go in and clean up these areas again. And I'll show you by using the flood tool here, this bucket right underneath your hard eraser. And I'm going to find here in the lagoon, in our color wheel, I'm going to pick this 20% gray. And I'm going to just click inside of our sidewalk area. So now we have our sidewalk. I'm going to go up to the top, and towards the right-hand side of our toolbar, we have our colors editor palette. Now here, I'm using the HSB sliders. When you open this palette, you might find that it's on the color wheel or the crayons. But I like to use HSB sliders. Click on the slider icons and go to the fourth option, HSB. Now I'll use the hue, which is my color, saturation and brightness options, to find a nice green to make into my grass. I'm going to use this light green, and I can always adjust this a bit later if I need to, and fill in these areas. And now I know that for the most part, these are going to be my grassy areas. I'll also pick a blue and fill in the area that I want to be my pond. Hold the space bar to zoom out and readjust your canvas so that you can view your sliders and your menus and your image comfortably. I'm going to make my palette a little smaller, and now I'm going to open the Layers palette. Here at the top, you'll see this Layers icon, and when you click it, this Layers window will open. And now I can see I have my background layer. And before I start adding new layers, I think I'm going to scale everything on this layer to be a bit bigger. And I can do that by holding V and using the Scale Uniform option here in the center and just moving this a bit out of the way. I'm going to use the space here in my lower left-hand side of the canvas to start creating assets on a new layer that I can copy and paste and populate this scene. I'm going to do that by going back here to my Layers palette and hitting the plus icon, which is my Add New Layer icon. I'm going to go back to my felt tip pen. Here in my lagoon, I'm going to pick black, adjust my size, maybe a little more. And what I'm going to do is start sketching out some trees and bushes from an aerial view. I'm going to keep these shapes really simple and organic with not a lot of detail, just so that you have the idea that it's a tree. I'm going to use my Flood tool, use my Option key to turn on my color picker and select this green that I've already been using, just so that I have a base, and then I'm going to adjust it, make it a slightly darker green, so that now I have a green that'll stand out on top of this image. So when I move it, by holding that V, I can place this anywhere and it will look like a tree from an aerial view. I'm going to make a few more assets just like this, and then I'll copy and paste them accordingly. Before I move on, I'll go back to my pen tool. I will zoom in and just make sure I get all the little detail, make sure all my color is filled in at least. And anytime I need to pick a color, again, I just hold down the Option key on my keyboard while I have any brush activated. Flood tool included. And then the color picker will show up. I'm also going to create a smaller, what we would consider a bush or a shrubbery. You can also do this by sketching lightly so you have the shape you want, and then going back in and just pressing harder. You can always go back and use your eraser tool to erase some of this area, and increase your brush size as you need to. And I'm just going to thicken some of these lines a bit so that it stands out. It doesn't need to be completely uniform in terms of line quality. It's nice to have some variation. You can even go back in here and you can add thick and thins if you have the time. And by thick and thins, I mean just varying the quality of your assets so that there are some thin lines and some thick lines to give the illusions of depth. And I'm going to use my Flood tool again. Flood my bush or shrub. And go back in with my felt tip pen and fill in any areas I need to take care of. Again, I'll just go in and get black and add just the slightest bit of textural detail. I'll use my lasso tool or hold down L just to select this and use the move puck to just place it out of the way so I can create a few more assets. Once I have all the assets I want to create, I'll use them to populate this area. I'm going to create the top of what would be a covered picnic area. And to do that, I'm going to stay on my felt tip pen. I'm going to use my square shape tool here. While I have my colors editor open, I'm going to pick a roof color. And I'm going to go for something a bit orangey. And I'm going to draw this shape. I'll use my flood tool to fill it in with color. And now I'm going to show you something a bit special. I'm going to use my felt tip pen. I'm going to go into my layers option here, my layers palette, and on the layer itself, there's this icon on the lower left here, or lower right hand side, and it's lock transparency. And when I click that, anything I draw will not go outside of the shape. I'm going to color pick and get this orange and find a slightly darker shade. And I'm going to divide this like if it was a triangular roof and we were looking down on it. Sometimes I like to sketch these lines. Sometimes it's easier to go back to your line tool at the top of the canvas and then just drag a straight line. Usually this is the quicker way. Go back to my freehand tool, increase my brush size, or I can go to my flood tool and flood this area. And I'll pick a slightly darker shade than that to fill in this area. And go back in with my pencil and clean up any unnecessary lines or marks. And this will be the top of our picnic area. Again, I'll use my lasso tool, selecting it up here at the top or hitting the L on the keyboard. And I'll get this out of my way. And then I'll just create a couple of simple boxes that will represent some miscellaneous objects. Again, I have my pen tool. I'm going to select a neutral gray by going into my lagoon and picking this gray 20%, I guess, again. And I will draw a square by clicking the square shape icon here. Remember to turn your lock transparent layers back off so that you can create your new shapes. And I'm going to make a couple. I'll make a rectangle and I'll make some boxes. And then when I place these, I'll label them with some copy to inform the viewer of what they actually represent. And lastly, I'll just fill those areas. And let's zoom out. I'm going to label this layer by clicking on the layer and dragging over to the right to rename layer, and I'm going to call this Assets. And now I'll use these to copy and paste and place around my